in the park.
Yeah, I'm in the park. Good evening, Ron. It's good morning for me, and we've had to reschedule our schedule with daylight savings and us being a few more hours apart.
And as I said when we were chatting the other day, that when our daylight savings time, it'll be fall back. We were 14 hours apart. Now we're 15 hours apart. And we will be on November 3rd, 16 hours difference.
Yep, the mind boggles. It's amazing, though, that I can...
Your daylight savings time went in one direction, and mine is going the other direction, which is widening the gap between us.
Yeah, I think we'll just have to annex Melbourne, Florida, and bring it to Australia. It's going to make life a lot easier.
Well, I call this Melbourne West and call Australia Melbourne East.
Yep. You'll always be welcome in your second home here.
I have a lot of friends in Australia, but actually in the Melbourne area too. I can't remember. When I first started doing videos, I had a number of people. They thought that when they saw Melbourne, they thought I was local to them over there. And, of course, I'm quite a ways away. But I was invited. If I ever come there, I'm sure I wouldn't lack for a place to stay.
Absolutely. Always welcome at my place. It's an amazing place, Australia, and there's so much happening here for a country with such a small population. There is just so much going on, and it's a truly amazing place. I grew up in
park behind you. I mean, I love
this is
the trees.
Yeah, this is a beautiful place, and it's where I spend a lot of my free time. And I do the school run in the mornings, and I go to the park and I take off my grounding walk barefooted wherever possible. In winter, that gets a bit difficult. But
you get snow there?
We don't get snow. We're just below the snow line, so we're at the feet of the Australian Alps. So if we go up a couple of 100 feet, that's where you start to get the snow line. But that's quite a ways away from here. But we do get the frost. We do get the sort of your -5 centigrades, and well below freezing point. So in winter, the old barefoot walk is very, very short.
Well, unless you're one of those in the polar bear club like they do in Russia, where they actually chop holes in the ice and go swimming. I still don't understand how they can do that, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose.
Well, it's all in the conditioning of the body, I suppose.
That's true, and they probably use a lot of antifreeze, or I guess they call it vodka up there.
Vodka, yeah, good old potato vodka, and I hope you don't go blind. Homemade vodka. I remember drinking homemade vodka that Russian friends brought with them when I was living in Europe, and it sort of tasted very much like turpentine, but it didn't stop the fun.
So you're a couple of times.
So yeah, we were talking.
Voice broke up just slightly, but we're gonna keep rolling anyway.
Yeah, I'm tethered to the mobile phone with a laptop, so I was wondering whether this was going to work or not. So it's experimental, folks.
Yeah. So, what's going on in your world that you're free to share, or would like to share?
There's not much going on other than the trees are swaying and the birds are singing, and that's what I like to do when I get out to the park. And the park is a place where I can stop the identification with myself so easily, and just become part of nature, just become another leaf on a tree or another bird singing, or just forget about myself, forget about this psychological me, this little center, and forget what the tree's called and forget what the bird's called, and just see it for what it is, be one with it. And that to me is the amazing power of nature. And it kind of brings me to something that we were talking about the other day, about a friend of yours who's going through their awakening, and they're a fundamentalist Christian, and they're finding themselves at odds with their religion in some way because they're going through an awakening themselves. And I think that's happening a lot at the moment. There's so many people going through this awakening, and so many people are getting at odds with what they've been taught, because what they're starting to feel within themselves is something slightly different from what they've been taught. And I myself was a practicing Christian, a minister actually, or in minor orders, what we called in the liberal Catholic Church that I was a part of, in minor orders. They had the old-fashioned various steps that you take, beginning as a server and then going through the various initiations, as it were, about 6 or 7 minor orders before you finally get to deacon and to priest. And I was halfway up the ladder, and I was studying to be a priest as well. And for me, the liberal Catholic Church is very interesting because it's a church where there is no dogma other than that the only central belief that you have is that God is the creator of all and that God dwells within all of us. And
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was very, very interesting because I loved the ritual of it, because they still do to this day the old-fashioned ritual with the candles and the thorifers, and everything is measured out. And it's I was really attracted to that because there was an order in that, and there was that almost that sacred geometry, that hinting at that sacred geometry was in that service. And I've swung many a thurifer in my day, and another thing that I liked about it was that they had no confession, that the element of sin was something that was sort of very, very far in the background. And there is a moment during the Mass where the priest just says, okay, Holy Father, I would like to ask forgiveness for, and then he goes quiet, and then everybody in their own mind for a little minute, thought of what they thought they were guilty of or how they transgressed and asked for forgiveness for that. And then we swung the thurifer in blessing, and that was that. And that took care of the confessional component.
So the priest didn't get any inside scoop as to who was doing what, huh?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There were no little confession cubicles or anything like that. It was just between you and your maker, and there was a moment for that, and that absolution was just a general absolution, and there was a blessing at the end of that moment, and that was it. So the concept of ourselves as being unworthy or being sinners really wasn't very much present in that. And a lot of the priests were the liberal Catholic Church started as an offshoot of the Theosophical Society, actually, and one of the founding bishops was Bishop Leadbeater, who was CW Leadbeater, who was a Theosophist.
I remember that name.
And he was a clairvoyant, and he turned away from the church in his early days, and then when he went traveling to India, he stopped somewhere in Cyprus or something like that, and there was a little church there, and he went in there out of interest, and he got his clairvoyant vision, and then he started to see that the ritual was attracting angelic beings, and he sort of came back to it a little bit, and he went into the East and he studied the Eastern philosophies, and then when he came back he met up with someone, and there was a rogue bishop, high bishop in the old Roman Church of Holland. And so he inaugurated Leadbeater as a bishop, and that's how the offshoot started. So oddly enough, the Theosophist-led liberal Catholic Church was still recognized by the Vatican as having valid holy orders because of the valid inauguration by a high bishop. So, and that's really, it was a kind of very funny church because, some of the priests were teaching me Qigong and esoteric healing and about the chakra systems and all these sort of things. So there was a lot going on. There was a component that was very traditional that sort of like the more fundamentalist Christian groups that say, well, we're fallen ones, we're sinners, and we're in need of redemption. And I'll just turn this a bit so I don't get the sun so much. And then there were all these freethinkers there, and of of course, I gravitate towards the freethinkers, and there was always this argument between these priests, we're fallen ones and we're sinners and we need to be redeemed, and the other priests were saying, no, it's there's God transcendent, God outside of all creation, and you see that in the Bhagavad Gita too, having created the universe with but a smallest fragment of myself, I remain, God says in the Bhagavad Gita. And then you had God imminent, the God in all of creation, the God in all things, the God indwelling in yourself. And this is the point, I think, where you get to when you start to have that awakening, is that you start to become aware of the God, the divinity within yourself. And that is a very important bit of awareness, I think, in your unfoldment of your spiritual life, is that you begin to see yourself as not separate to anything, not separate to nature, not separate to the universe, not separate to God. That you begin to see yourself as God in action, and that you begin to see yourself as the embodiment of the divine. And of course in Christianity, as probably distorted as all writings are that have been passed down and gone through several translations over the ages, there is still plenty in the Bible to say that you are God. Jesus says, as I am, so shall ye be. And I think that even is a somewhat of a mistranslation. I think what he originally would have said is, as I am, so are ye. Because we are already divine. The seeds of divinity are already within us. And this is where we have to begin to accept ourselves for who we really are, rather than have somebody prescribe it for us and lay it out for us and tell us how it is, and then lay out a series of sequential steps for us to be reunified so as to be worthy to enter heaven. We begin to see ourselves as already unified, never separated from God, and already in heaven, because the kingdom of heaven is within you. And I remember a psalm that goes, nearer than hands and feet art thou, O Lord, nearer than hands or feet. Well, what does that mean? It means that you are divine, and that you are made of the stuff of divinity, and just some really simple lines of thinking, like, okay, if God created everything, then what did he create everything out of? Was there a bucket of leftover crud that he threw out, or, is everything that is created God itself? Because God created, if there's nothing but God, then creation can be nothing but God, and that's where a lot of the fundamentalist Christians are at odds with. They cannot accept that they are God, that nature is God, that the universe is God, that the mind is the mind of God, and that the heart is
they call that pantheism, and they only can comprehend a transcendent God, not the imminent God. And that's where the awakening is, and it's not just Christianity that's happening. I mean, I've had contact with people even that are in Islam and stuff like that, and Buddhists and Hindus and stuff like that, since I've started doing these videos, back in 2011. I've had contact with people from all religions and no religions that really are waking up. I mean, even atheists are coming. In fact, I have a very good friend who for years considered himself an atheist. And he's had his own spiritual awakening in the last several years, actually, before I started doing the videos. I knew him before I did these. But it's happening all over the world. You're absolutely right on.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of starting to accept yourself for who you are and for what you are. Starting to accept these emotions and feelings that are part of your makeup, that are your makeup, and that's where that fundamentalist belief that has God outside yourself as some sort of externalized force is where it falters, because God is inside yourself, and everything, there's nothing that's not God, because everything is created from the stuff of God, so to speak. So whatever there is within yourself, you need to accept. And of course, if you externalize the Savior, then you're not accepting that salvation, if you want to, and I still don't like that term at all, but that's within yourself, that you are your own savior, that we're the ones that we've been waiting for all along, and that it's us that's going to make it happen. And for me, this world is not a place where we've been cast out of the heavens because we were naughty children. This world is where heaven is to be created. Heaven is to be created in a three-dimensional, in a solid shape and form. And for me, being alive as a person in the flesh, not even as part of nature, but as nature itself, as nature grows people, the planet grows people like it grows trees. For me, that is the greatest privilege that spirit can have, is to come to this island we call physical existence and physical universe, and to experience...
Where separation seems real.
Yeah, but that separation is an amazing thing. I can sit here and have a conversation with you, or I can sit here and I can touch a tree, and this is this gift of separation, because once we become no longer at odds with ourselves, once we become unified within ourselves, then this gift of separation is a beautiful thing, because it allows for a unique interaction, and a unique interaction that you can't have in any other heaven or dimension. Or this is just an amazing place, and it's an amazing privilege to be alive in the flesh, and to be aware in the flesh, and to be walking amongst these beautiful trees and these beautiful animals, and to interact with other people. And the concept of us being a sinner and having to go somewhere else, and you see it not only in religion, but you see it in the New Age spirituality, and you see it in the newer New Age spirituality as well, where people are wanting to go to the fifth dimension. There's still that underlying thought is that there's something wrong. We're here and there's something wrong. We've fallen. And we haven't fallen. We have come here to establish this kingdom of heaven, and we've come to establish it within ourselves. And when we establish it within ourselves, and we all do that collectively, then we establish it on this planet. We establish it in 3D, and we bring the kingdom of heaven down onto earth. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, and that is where we're heading. And then you've got the both and again, and here we are, both and people, both of us. And then you've got the both and again. You've got God transcendent and God imminent, God outside of all things and God inside of all things. You've got that reconciled. You've got that in harmony. And then when that's in harmony, and you're in harmony within yourself, then you begin to become a center of creation of harmony outside of yourself as well. That harmony starts to extend into your behavior and into your relationships. And relationship is the thing that governs separate entities that are having an experience on this beautiful holiday island for God, which is 3D creation. And then we become creative in our relationships. And this is where humanity and this awakening is leading us. It's leading us into a deeper understanding of our own divinity, and leading us into a harmonious expression of that in our relationships to each other and to nature. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So the Christian doesn't have to throw away Christianity to become awake, because whatever metaphor you choose is a valid metaphor as long as it comes from within you and it comes outside, and it comes from your heart. And that's the thing. We've personified God as Jesus, and we've put him external to us, and we pray to Jesus. But what Jesus was really saying was that the divinity is within you. As I am, so are ye. And that to me is the better translation, because we already are divine. The seeds of divinity are unfolding from within us. And Christ, we had Jesus, the man who achieved Christ consciousness, out of whom his innate Christ consciousness unfolded. And we're all doing that. We're all unfolding naturally our divinity from within. So rather than having this external man Jesus that we pray to, which when we see ourselves as separate from God and as sinners, we need some sort of exterior person, some sort of exterior God to pray to and to worship. And when we turn that around and we see Jesus as someone who achieved Christhood, and we see ourselves as being Christ, as unfolding this Christ consciousness, then we really start to work with what is, because that is what we is. We are divine. And when we start to work with what is, then it starts to unfold naturally. And sometimes that will put you at odds with those ideas of this external Christ. Because nearer than hands or feet, O Lord, art thou. That is within yourself. That means that the Lord is within yourself and within everything you see and touch and smell and feel and think. And that's the important distinction that you need to make, is you need to start looking from the external Jesus to the internal Christ. And so you don't have to throw away Christianity, because everything that we attribute...
Or any other religion.
Yeah, exactly right. Everything
you assimilate it and fulfill the whole purpose of the religion, which is oneness with God. And loving ourselves and our neighbor.
Yep, that's exactly right. So rather than having this external Christ, you have this internal Christ that you're now unfolding. And therefore you are a valuable part of all of creation, and you have immense value, and you're not a sinner, and you haven't been cast out of anything. You are unfolding something. You're unfolding that divinity within nature, within yourself. And that's the beautiful thing. You don't have to discard it. You just have to stop looking external and start looking internal, and then all those principles, they apply very, very much. And and I'd go one step further and say we are already it. If we could just drop those thoughts that we need to seek something external, or that we need to redeem something, if we just drop that whole attitude, what is left then? If we drop that whole attitude of this separate little me, this separate little sinner that needs to learn how to go back to God and go back to heaven, what are we left with then? And that is, of course, a question that is a hard one to answer, because we've been so taught to look at the external. And when we begin to answer that question, we have to begin with, well, I don't know. And of course the mind is addicted to trying to explain everything. And so if we're externalizing our divinity, then, and somebody says, well, you just have to follow these steps, and you have to believe in this, and you have to go through this ritual, and then there is this whole process of becoming again. And the mind really wants to try and understand it all, and the mind can't explain it all. And so when you start going within, you have to get to that spot of not knowing, of saying, I have to discard all this stuff that I've been taught, and all this stuff that I've had thrown in front of me. And then I have to go inside, and I have to start investigating and learning about myself. And then when you learn about yourself, you'll start to find that a lot of those external things from the Bible or the Quran or whatever it is actually do apply, but then you experience them for yourself within yourself, and it's not a matter of belief anymore. Belief is maybe a placeholder at best, and belief can lead us astray. And it's just momentarily discarding that knowledge and that roadmap that you've been given by the external religions, and actually getting to a place where you're enjoying not knowing. And I speak of it often. I speak often of the joy of not knowing, because that is how I experience myself at one with everything, when I accept the not knowing. And when I go into the not knowing, that's where I start to experience myself. And that's where I start to experience the divinity and the truth of myself. It's because I'm not following anybody's roadmap anymore. I've accepted that I don't know anything, and then I have to look at what there is. And then I see that what there is not at all at odds with what religion or spirituality has taught us. But it comes out of a self-acceptance and a willingness to go within oneself, and a willingness to reconcile the opposites, not dissolve them, but see that the opposites can coexist within and without ourselves, and accept that as a reality without having to judge or having to be on one side or another. And that's the beautiful thing about the journey, is that it is innate in all of us, and it's imminent in all of us.
You know, one of the scriptures that's come to mind about 2 or 3 times since I've been listening to you talk is is the ministry of Christ is the ministry of reconciliation. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, but didn't know him not. But he came to reconcile this not knowing into a knowing, and then, as you're saying, back into being okay with letting life unfold. And that's what I believe you mean by the not knowing. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, and I'm willing to just allow it to unfold within me without having all the answers predetermined and getting frustrated. Although I get frustrated sometimes.
Oh, so do I. Come on, we're only human. But it is. It's like you say, that not knowing is that place where you can start experiencing what is, rather than having some sort of, rather than living from memory, you're living in the moment then. If you're not knowing, you're living in the moment and you see what's actually happening. And when you actually begin to observe what is actually happening within yourself, not the ideal that the external religion puts in front of us of you should be like this, or you should be like that, or you should not be angry, or you should not feel this, or you should not feel that, but actually accepting those feelings and seeing the source of those feelings. And you can do that when you're in not knowing. And of course, with the external religions, we study and we commit all this stuff to memory, and then we're living from memory. And there's nothing wrong with memory. You need memory to, know who you are and where you live, and what your door key looks like when you're about to enter your house. It's good stuff, but there is a difference to living with memory and living from memory. And of course, when we externalize religion and we begin to memorize the rules, then all we're doing is we're going to a memory of knowledge of what should be, and we're not living with knowing, the inging again, of what is. And that's the only difference, really. And the only difference is that you become dynamically aware of the spiritual principles when you accept yourself. And therefore you don't have to rote learn it as an ideal, but you are actually experiencing it as what is.
You become a mystic.
Yeah, and there's no big deal to that, because we're all mystics, I mean, I'm sitting here and I look at the sun behind me, and it is as if we, have got one eye closed and we're looking at the sun and we've got our finger in front of our eye, And then religion tells you, well, in order for you to see the light, you need to, meditate on the finger, or you need to contemplate what the finger is made of, or, there are all these methods for removing the finger, but all you need to do is just drop your hand, and you realize that you're already always standing in the light. You were never not standing in the light. And that's the thing, that's the thing that we're led to believe, is that we've got to do something about dissolving this finger somehow, when all we have to do is drop it. And that's what you do. When you go within, you drop all your knowledge, all your memorized memory, and you begin your journey of knowing for yourself, experiencing for yourself. So, even the fact that we say that person is a mystic and that person is not a mystic, that's already a degree of separation that's created, because the mystic is somebody who knows, and now I need to know that too. No, you're already the mystic. Everybody is the mystic. A seed of divinity is unfolding within you, and all you have to do is apply your inner, and for me it's a listening, and my inner listening to nature and listening to myself. And that's all you need to do, and that's a dynamic thing, knowing. And this moment of now is always changing. It's always dynamic. And the moment you say, oh, I understand what the now is all about, then it's memory, and you're coming from memory again. You've missed the now. And that's what being now is all about, And that there's that question. I saw Alan Watts, an Alan Watts dissertation once on video about, when were you born? And he was asking the question, were you born when you crowned, when your head popped out? Is that the moment you were born? Or were you created when the egg and the seed came together? Or hang on a minute, no. Were you created when you were just a glint in your father's eye, when he was looking at your mother lustfully? Or, hang on a minute, no, you have to go back then and say, well, hang on, there's your grandfather. Were you created when you were a glint in your grandfather's eye? you know, and then you go back and you say, no, the only possible time that I could have been created is right now, because in this one moment of now, this whole creation unfolded and it started traveling throughout time. So you were created at the beginning of time. At the beginning of time itself is where you were created and where you were born. You were never not here. You were never not in the light. And this whole idea that we have to somehow travel through time and follow a prescribed path to get somewhere is the very notion that stands in the way of our direct perception of who we are, the eternal, the timeless. And that's where...
By the way, it is 30 and a half minutes now.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up. I'll wrap it up with this thought, is that the mind wants to explain everything in a sequence of time, and there is causality. The mind's main function is something happens and there's a consequence to it and there's another consequence to it, and if I follow those lines, then I can understand what's happening. Whereas what the mind cannot understand, and what you only understand within your inner silence when you quiet your mind, is that everything already always was in this one moment of now. And that one moment of now you can access through not knowing and listening to yourself in this moment of now, without memory, without knowledge, but by knowing. Know thyself is the greatest tenet that was ever uttered on this planet.
Well, thank you, Peter. I appreciate you rearranging your schedule to accommodate some of the changes that I'm going through and the daylight savings time and all of that stuff. So it's going to work out, and I'll be able to get this up, I imagine, 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that. Who knows? Whatever time I haven't finished with all the processing, I'll schedule it like I did the one I did yesterday. I did it in the afternoon and then didn't put it up until 4 a.m.
Well, it's good to know this little mobile setup works, so that makes me a little bit more flexible. When I'm running around, I can park it somewhere and we can do a video anywhere, anytime. So that's great.
Yeah, that works good for me.
Yeah, it was a little bit off the cuff because it was off our usual schedule today, but I think we did all right. And,
I think so too, and I appreciate it. And as always, I think we give people something to reflect upon, and for people that are going through some struggles with what's happening now and the awakening that's going on, you don't have to give anything up. You just have to assimilate.
Yep, absolutely right. So we'll leave it at that. Namaste,
Ron. Thank you. Namaste.